Well, good evening, listeners. You're listening to Lament of Hope podcast, and I'm here today with Michael Learned. She's probably most famously known for Olivia Walton in The Waltons, so the mom in the longstanding television series, The Waltons. Um, but she's done several other acting works as well. You know, um, Michael, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to pop on here and talk with me.
Thanks for having me. This is fun. I
So
love talking about myself.
good, because I think I'm not sure many people would admit that. So that means we're at a good start. Um, Michael was just telling me before we started, and I think this might be cool to just get in on here that um she faced a lot of teasing for her name being a male sounding name, Michael. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit, Michael? Because you were saying that all of your siblings have unusual names, but you particularly received some teasing for your name.
Well, I did because well, the it wasn't even teased. The kids weren't so bad. I mean, some of them would say Michael motorcycle or something like that, but it wasn't a big deal. But the adults, the teachers or something, they'd say, "What's your name?" And I'd say Michael Learned, and they'd say, "What's your real name?" I'd say Michael Learned, and they'd say, "You sure it's not Michelle Learned?" And I'd say, "Yes, I'm sure it's not Michelle, it's Michael." And they wouldn't believe me. And when you're little, you feel so helpless because they're powerful and you're dumb and little. And, I just would kind of run out of what to do. I would just go, "Mm." It was up to them to take me seriously.
And you never asked your parents about why?
I'm sorry.
Did you ever ask your parents about why they did
Well,
that?
yeah, this is my father with a cigarette and scotch in his hand. Um, had you been a boy, we were going to name you Caleb. But as you were a girl, we decided to name you Michael. See the
Hmm.
expression on your face? That's what I looked. I thought, what?
You're like, how's that answer my question?
Exactly. But my mother said, well, I said, there are no women named Michael. Why did you name me Michael?
Yeah.
And she said, well, there is a woman named Michael Strange who was married to F. Scott Fitzgerald, and she was a poetess. And now I read somewhere there's a Michael somewhere, probably in England somewhere.
Michael of Kent.
Michael of Kent, Valerie just told me. So, yeah. So I'm not lonely anymore. Mhm.
Do you write poetry?
No, I think I
No.
tried when I was young, a little bit, but not seriously, no.
Do you
Mhm.
like poetry, like
Are you a
reading it?
poet? Are you a poetess?
No, but I wondered because you said that one of them was a poet. And I was like, I wonder
Oh,
if you,
her name was Michael Strange,
yeah.
but her name was Michael Strange, and she was married to F. Scott Fitzgerald, who was a playwright, um, and a writer, maybe not a playwright. I'm not sure he wrote plays, but he wrote a lot of beautiful novels. And she was a poet and well known for her poetry, but I'm not a poetess, no. I write, but
What do you like to write?
I don't like to write at all. Most writers don't, and I don't either. But I'm not a writer, but I don't, if I force myself to sit down for even 15 minutes, then I get going. But it's the sitting down part and staring at the computer part that I don't like. And I think a lot of writers will tell you that. But I have written some essays and a few little things that I might put into a memoir someday. Uh, Although there's a part of me that wants to be the only actress in the United States that has not written her memoir.
Well, I guess why would you want to write a memoir?
That's a good question. I guess ego. I mean, why? You're right. Why would you want to write a memoir? But maybe it's a little, you want to share your journey, maybe,
Yeah.
because nobody's going to remember me except my children and grandchildren and so on. But nobody's going to remember me. And I don't care about that. Men seem to care about that more than women do.
Hmm.
I don't offend anybody, but we have children that carry our legacy, if you know what I mean, children
Yeah.
and grandchildren and so on. And men basically have their work, and that's about it for them to leave their legacy to the world. So my legacy is my kids and my grandchildren and their children. Um, but the Waltons, nobody will hear about the Waltons in another 20 years, probably. So
Was there an actress you wanted to be most like when you were acting? Like, did you have a goal you were trying to hit with the acting or not really?
I wanted to be like Katharine Hepburn. I thought she was a wonderful actress.
Yeah.
I really admired her work. And as a woman, I admired her because I was sort of for many years I was kind of a closet Aries because I'm a double Aries, and but I was kind of shy, and I always say I was a closet Aries because Aries were supposed to be out there and leaders and this and that. I was uh, I was strong,
Hmm.
strong woman, thankfully. But as a young woman, I was very rigid, held in.
Yeah.
I grew up in Europe where you had to be polite, you had to do the right thing, you had to curtsy when you said hello, you had to, there were all these rules, which in a way made life easier because you knew what the rules were, which you don't know in this country. You don't know as a kid whether you're supposed to hold the door for an older person or if you
Yeah.
stand up and they're older people, they don't know why you're standing up. It's loose here, whereas in Europe it's pretty specific, or it was back when I was there, which is a long time ago, 50s.
Did you want to act long term? Because I know like Katharine Hepburn, she loved acting and she really put her heart and soul into it. Um,
She,
is that what did you want your acting to become like a big career for you, or was it just something that you hoped to dabble in a while and then do something different?
no, I never wanted to dabble at all. I worked really hard. I went to a boarding school in England, which was a wonderful school, but I was very, very unhappy
Hmm.
I was a very screwed up adolescent. I cried all the time. And so we were living in Austria, and my parents sent me to this boarding school in England. So I was in a different country from my family. I
Hmm.
loved Austria, but I'm in this rigid English boarding school, and I was just so unhappy. The teacher said, "Could you cry a bit more quietly, please, Michael?" Because I'd be sitting in the class going,
Oh,
I did get a wonderful education in drama, and I had wanted to be a dancer, and it's basically a ballet school. So I became a special drama student, and it just kind of evolved. And I'm grateful. Sometimes I feel like the hand was on my shoulder and said, "This you want to go here, but you're going here."
yeah.
And where I wasn't wanting to go was the right direction. And it's usually been that way my whole life. Where I don't want to go is usually where I should be.
Well, you mentioned that you're a little more reserved, or were. Was it hard to do acting because you had to kind of break out of that shell?
Yes, but I remember the very first acting exercise they gave me, and I was what, 11, I guess, was pouring a beer in a pub. I just felt so stupid going up and miming. I just felt stupid. It was embarrassing. I thought,
Yeah.
what's this about? But that was the first year. The second year I went back and I really got into it. I won the drama cup by mistake. We all were competing within the school,
Yeah.
and I won the drama cup, and everybody was like, "Oh," and including me. And one of the teachers said, "You're not a very good dancer. You might think about becoming a special drama student." So, okay. And here I am. And, it was a wonderful training. The English are so well trained because you start at 11 years old, you're doing intercostal diaphragmatic breathing, you're building your body to be
Hmm.
what you want to be as a dancer or an actor or whatever. And here
You,
you basically have high school, hopefully a little bit, and college. And once you're in college, you really can get serious about your acting as a career. But
yeah. Well, did you do you enjoy being known for the iconic role of the Waltons or not? Because I've talked to some actors and actresses and they love it. They embrace the fact that they were this character and everybody knows them from this one thing. But other actors and actresses don't like it. And they're like, no, I wish, more people could think of another movie I've been in, but it seems like this is the one character that I'm always talked about. For you, do you treasure the fact that you were kind of one of the moms, for a lot of people for a while. Did you enjoy that, or for you, do you wish there were other roles people remembered you for?
It's a tough question because I think what happens with actors is we don't want to be typecast.
Yeah,
Uh, and you know, I have done a lot of comedy on stage, a lot of, Shakespeare and the classic Moliere and the classics. And but to be remembered for maybe the next 10 years or however long for Olivia is not a bad role to be remembered for.
yeah,
I still get letters from people saying, you were my comfort. Every Thursday night was the only time I felt safe when I watched the Waltons, things like that, which really make you feel very humbled that you've been part of somebody's life, childhood, and gave them the courage to, believe in what the Waltons was all about.
yeah.
I still get letters. You taught me how to be a mother. Well, I didn't, but my character did. So
Well, I was gonna say, because you were mentioning earlier, home life was, it sounds like, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that home life seemed a little bit unstable or different than the Waltons. Was that for you being this mother, this stable, very involved, because the Waltons, I don't want to say they're an ideal family because they showed a lot of their struggles too, but they were a very close-knit, loving family. And I know even for me, comes from a harder background. I mean, you look at that and you're like, I would love that. I'd love that closeness with siblings and adults and how they could talk about things and how they loved one another and they were always saying good night to each other. Um, for you, was it daunting to be in this kind of idealistic family on TV?
no, it was annoying.
Really?
It was
Wow.
just annoying. Well, Ralph and I both, because Earl Hamner, the creator of the show, who's really John Boy grown up, and he's writing about his own mother, who was still alive at the time. And
Mm.
so he didn't want to write anything that in any way would hurt her or offend her. And
Oh,
I said, Earl, this character is obnoxious. She's so nice. She's so good. She knows all, she never scolds. So I said, no mother in the world is that perfect. And people are not going to love her for being a perfect person. They're going to love her because she's a human being and makes mistakes and scolds the wrong child sometimes. And it gets overtired and cranky, whatever, so that then people can really, women especially, can relate to being the mother of 7 children or however how many she was supposed to have. She and Pa Walton had a very intimate relationship. They loved each other, and Ralph and I loved each other too. So that was fortunate. We really cared about the whole family. We're still in touch. We get high every time we get together at a reunion or anything. We're just high. We're so happy to be together. So it's really nice.
was there anything that you found particularly hard to act about Olivia that you didn't relate to at all?
No, I just was bored sometimes, because I'd have maybe one line, time for bed, kids, you know,
Yeah.
and 15 hours later, and I've said time for bed, kids, however many, 7 or 8, because they have to cover everybody. Um, I had my own kids at home, and I'd be just let me out of here. But in retrospect, I'm eternally grateful. I mean, I can't believe that I even complained ever, and I did. I did complain because I thought, "Oh, I'm spending 15 hours here doing this and saying time for bed, kids." But it was a gift from God for me at the time. I had no money. I was going through a divorce. I had 3 small kids, not small, but uh, pre-adolescent kids to
Yeah.
take care of. And, God just said, here, you can have this. And I, I, I don't know how, I don't think I deserved it, but it was a gift. And there was a woman, and I always mention her, nobody really cares, but I do. Her name was Ethel Wynand, and she was the head of CBS casting at the time, back in the
Hmm.
70s. And she used to come up, she did her groundwork, she'd come to theaters and see talent and see the plays in repertory companies and everything. And she used to come up to ACT, where I was the leading lady with my ex-husband, where we were kind of, I don't know, we were the leading man and leading lady, and there were many of us. I mean, it was an ensemble
Yeah.
company, but we got some really juicy roles. And she would come up, and she just liked me. She just thought I had talent. And so she
Mm.
apparently, and I didn't even know this while she was still alive. I really liked her as a person. So we'd go out to lunch occasionally. She never said a word, but later I learned from another wonderful director who said, sorry, she wrestled Fred Silverman to the ground over you. I said, what do you mean? And she said, he didn't want you. He didn't think you were right for the role. And he was
Hmm.
right. I had short blonde hair like this. Well, I have longer hair, but I mean, it was short like this. And I was 32, and they were looking for a woman in her 40s with long red hair. I wasn't right for the role, but she pushed it, and I'm grateful to her forever and ever
Wow.
for casting me in that role. Yeah.
Did you ever get to kind of tell her that in person?
No, because I didn't know until after she was gone.
Oh, wow.
I
Okay.
mean, I took her out to lunch. We had a friendship, sort of, a little bit. You don't do that now for some reason, but back then you casting people and actors were more, it wasn't as separated as it tends to be now.
Yeah. Well, was that because you were saying you're going through a divorce, but you're acting in this role where your husband loves you deeply and you have a very good relationship? Was that painful to kind of be reminded that that wasn't real for you at the moment?
No, it wasn't, but going through the divorce indeed was. And yes, there were times, because I was in pain, when I'd be sitting in the living room waiting for for the next scene, and they'd be doing a scene in one of the other rooms or something. And I would just think, God, wouldn't it be nice if my life could be like this? And it wasn't at that time. I was during the time of my divorce, I was drinking heavily, and I was crying all the time. I was just lost because I'd been married since I was a teenager, 17 years old.
Hmm.
And so when my husband and I separated, it's like I'd already lived more than half my lifespan, or almost half my lifespan, with this wonderful man.
Yeah.
Um, so it, it was traumatic for me. I left, but it was hard. It wasn't something that some people just walk away and go, oh, that's the end of that. It wasn't like that for me.
Yeah.
So I was in a lot of emotional pain um, during a lot of the years that we shot the Waltons. And it was so interesting. And also I felt torn because I had my own 3 kids at home, and I was spending 15 hours on a set with kids that I love, but who weren't my own kids.
Yeah.
And Richard used to get pissed off with me. Now that he's got kids of his own, he said, I'm beginning to understand what you were going through back then.
Hmm.
He's a sweetheart, by the way. He's truly one of the greatest, sweetest people in the whole world, Richard Thomas.
I've heard, I mean, I've seen in the interviews. I mean, I've not gotten to meet him yet myself, but he seems like a very intelligent too type of
He is.
person,
He's very
deep
smart.
thinker.
Yeah, very creative. He's a poet. He's written some beautiful poetry, which I don't understand. But anyway, it's lovely words. And he's got a great sense of humor. And he used to keep us, he and Eric Scott, who played Ben, used to
Hmm.
keep me going sometimes when I was just so exhausted. Because I didn't just go home and go to bed. I'd go home and pick up the groceries on my way home and cook dinner for the kids if
Yeah.
I got up early enough.
So
And
what time did your day start if it was a 15-hour day?
Well, they usually started around 7:30 would be the call, and then you'd
Okay.
be able to set by 8:30 or 9. And
Wow, okay.
but it depended on later on it got better for me. The writers really did try because I was such a complainer, and I was a pain in the ass. But I'd say I can't stand another day where all I do is say, and then what happened? I'll go out of my mind. So they really went out of their way to try. I mean, I went through menopause. I lost a baby. I applied for a job I didn't get. I worked for the Red Cross. They gave me things to do, which they really had to search for because to write for a nice person is much harder than it is to write for a bitch, if you excuse my language. But bitches are easy and they're fun to play. Um,
Well, also but you wanted versatility. I can understand that.
yeah, thank you, thank you, thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, I wanted something to. I had just come from playing Cleopatra in Shakespeare's Cleopatra and Bernard Shaw's Cleopatra, and
Wow.
Private Lives from Noah Coward, and suddenly I'm pouring coffee and making more money than I ever dreamed I would ever make, even though we didn't make that much back in those days. But to start, started making money if you lasted 5 years. Your original contract was kind of really small in comparison to what people are making today. But for me, it was like a gold mine. I mean, I went from $200 to $1,200 an episode, and that was a lot of money to me.
Yeah, especially
Thank
if you're
God for it.
supporting a
Yeah.
single mom. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't getting any, I was getting $40 a month for each kid, and that was it. So I couldn't have lived on that. So it was God's hand on my shoulder.
When you were saying that you divorced your husband of so long, was it because like what was the reason that you guys decided to separate?
That's a story for the National Enquirer. Um, he did not want the divorce. Um, but I felt myself, I don't want to go into what he did, but I felt
Sure.
myself going downhill. I was drinking too much. I was not living up to my own ethical and moral standards. And I couldn't go on like that. And I knew it. I can't go on like this. I can't. And I used to beg him. The only thing I think that he would regret um, was that I begged him to get into counseling, marriage counseling for both of us. And
Yeah.
he didn't want to do that. And I think if we had, I would have had to look at a lot of things about myself that I didn't, because I was the good guy in the relationship, but I was also very manipulative and controlling in my own way. It's like if everything's perfect for you, you won't leave me, that kind of control.
Yeah.
Uh, I'll have the fire going for you when you come home at 3 in the morning and I don't know where you've been. And I'll
Right.
pretend I'm asleep, but I'm really awake. That kind of thing. It was very 17, so I have to forgive myself.
It's
And
hard.
really did love me, and I loved him. And it tore the family apart. It's a murder. I think divorce is like the murder of a family.
Yeah.
So, it's we all bear the scars of it, but we've all come through somehow, including my ex-husband who's now deceased. But he remarried again to a beautiful woman who's now a friend of mine, and you um,
Hmm.
the kids love her. Um, as
No,
the grandkids, she's their other grandmother. And so,
yeah.
when people work hard to try to make things better, it's worth the trip, even if it's
Yeah.
there are rocks along the way. That's my dad in the background. I'm
Which
suddenly seeing that
picture?
all those pictures in the background. This is my dad.
Oh, as a little boy?
No,
Oh,
he's got
no. There you go. He is older.
he worked for the company, the CIA. He was a James Bond kind of dad.
That's stressful though. I can for
Well, he
you
was
that
very
must have been
strict.
hard.
He was. We adored him and we were scared of him all at the same time. But he came to see me once when I was this miserable little chubby girl in English boarding school. And we used to have assembly every morning in boarding school.
Yeah.
And we were in this big mansion. That's where the school was. And we had assembly every morning, and then everybody would go to their various classes. And this time the teacher said, "You stay behind, Michael." I thought, "Oh my God, what have I done? I'm standing
Oh,
alone
no.
in this assembly room, and usually the prefects were the only ones who would open the front door if there was a doorbell ring. And bell rang, and the headmistress came out and said, "Michael, go answer the door." And I'm going, "Oh, okay." And I went and I opened the door. There was my father standing there, James Bond. And it was like I'd never forgotten the feeling because I was all alone there. My family was in another country, and I was so homesick and so lonely. And there he was. And we spent the most beautiful day of my childhood together because I always had to share him with all my sisters. So this was my day alone with my dad. And it was a beautiful day. I wouldn't let anybody sit on my bed where he sat. It's like, this is sacred. This is where my dad sat on my bed. And
Oh.
yeah,
Why did he come? Was it just to surprise you?
no, he probably had business to do in London or something. I never asked him. It was just a thrill for me.
Yeah.
Um, it was a surprise, and it was a sacred day for me in my childhood.
What
He
did
was,
you do on the day?
well, we did nothing. We went to, there was a little local pub and we had lunch there. I think we did a little walking, and then he took me back to school, but I got to hold my father's hand. My father wasn't a kind of jolly daddy type, really. I mean, he was affectionate, but it wasn't, I can't, he wasn't Santa Claus, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
To hold his hand back to the school was, I died and gone to heaven, I felt. And then he had a package delivered. I was never, they used to give you tuck. They were still having coupons in those days. It was in the 50s. So you had something called tuck, and parents would send their kids candy and stuff like that, and it would go into the tuck room. And I never had any because I never got those boxes. But my father arranged for a box to come twice a month from Fortnum and Mason's, and that's a really wonderful store in
Mm.
London, and it would be packed full of cookies and treats and wonderful things. So yeah, he was a good dad.
Were you closer to your dad than your mom?
No, I was closer to my mother, really.
Okay.
Um, but my father was the strict guy that we sort of, as I said, we were afraid of him and we worshiped him all at the same time.
Yeah.
He had a way of growling at you, "Get your apples off the table, God damn it." That kind of thing. It wasn't like it is now after Dr. Spock, where everybody talks nice to their children. Um, so, so we had to stand up when he came into the room. We had to hold the door for him. Even while I was 16 years old, I felt stupid in this country, holding the door open for my father.
Wow.
But by the same token, he was capable of such sweetness.
What was your mom like? Was she similar or
Was she what?
was she similar to your dad or
My
different?
mother was, when I was little, my mother was my go-to person. Um, she, I don't mean a little, I mean, you know, prepubescent. She was understanding. She read us stories. She'd sing us lullabies at night, and um, but unfortunately, my parents were both big drinkers, and
Mm.
somehow my father could handle it better than my mother. So eventually, alcohol kind of took her over, and she became rather angry and a little bit mean toward the end. I don't really blame her, but it was sad. I felt like I lost my mother when the drinking started.
Yeah. So did she pass away relatively soon?
She was 65 when she died. Yeah.
Okay.
She died
And
of an enlarged heart, but also I think the drinking and the smoking.
yeah, it probably didn't help.
Yeah, they all did in those days. I did too, but I don't know. But a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know because with your first husband, you married a couple times after that, right?
Yes. Yes, I did. Yes.
So you've gone through a lot of pain then, because I mean
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. I
were
have.
the with the other marriages as well, was it because it was just not a healthy situation for you that you needed to?
It was just it wasn't fair really. It was someone I had known from earlier days, and he was going through a divorce and I was going through a divorce. I think we were both kind of feeling like we're in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
And because we knew each other, we kind of glammed together
Yeah.
and we weren't really right for each other in that way. He was a very good man, but I come from a totally different background than he did. And he was actually a dancer. He was a ballet dancer who became a stagehand. And he was a good man. And his daughter and son and I are still very close and friendly. And but we just weren't interested in the same thing. I think, and plus I suddenly got the Waltons. It was a whole different deal from how we knew each other in the theater.
Yeah.
Suddenly I was here and he was here. I mean, he wasn't really, but financially and everything. And I was a quote celebrity, and he wasn't. And so I think it was difficult for him, and um, we parted friends. Um, and the husband after him was an abusive man who is now a psychologist anyway, but he was very abusive. And I really can't, I can only think to myself, that was it. I must have been at my sickest when I was with him, my most codependent, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Uh, he's gotten his life together, and I don't want to badmouth him in any way, but he was abusive. There's no question. My son said, Mom, I used to stand outside your bedroom because I was afraid he was going to kill you. That's a horrible thing to hear from your son.
Yeah.
But I look back and I think, who were you then? It's not the person I am today. I mean, I wouldn't put up with that from John for 1 second, nor would he act like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is I have, but I think we're all here to work things out. I don't know what they are, but somehow we're always working some kind of something out. Either some people believe it's a past life, some people believe it's all about your childhood and your parents, and some people call it karma. I don't know what it is. Sorry about that, but somebody will get it, I promise.
Well, I'm just for me, it's like you had the courage though to marry again, and I would think that you would just give up because some people are just like, I'm done. I've done this a few times, it's not working. I don't want to do this again. So for you, like, how did you have the courage to keep, like, to try it again and to be able to be open again to the possibility of hurt and that not working out?
I'm just a girl who can't say no. I think really in a way I just I didn't want the second marriage. I didn't want the third marriage really. Um but I'm not good at kind of dating. I had never dated. I was 17 when I married my first husband, so I didn't know how to date or be out there. And I was brought up in the 50s, so in some ways I was a little bit rigid. And like Elizabeth Taylor, I think I always felt if you're going to sleep with somebody, you have to marry them. So I
Yeah.
don't know. And you don't. We're much freer now. And I mean, not if you're born again or anything, but basically society is a little freer than it was back in the 50s was a very rigid time, but you pretty much knew what the rules were.
Yeah. Well, what do you think makes life beautiful for you? Because you were talking earlier about, all of us have these different philosophies on, why we're on Earth and what we're pursuing and growing and all of that. For you, what do you find most beautiful about life that you that because you've lived a while, you've experienced so many things, what has life come, that beautiful aspect of it to you?
Well, um, I find God in nature. Um, Unfortunately, LA is pretty much a sprawling suburban,
Yeah,
which I've been good at. I like a big city like New York or London, and I love the country. But suburban, I never really understood too well, and yet here I am in suburbia, LA, and it's okay. But it's not what I would have picked, but it's what was picked for me. My husband needed to be here because of his work, and of course I'm an actress, so it didn't hurt for me to be here. And
sure.
it's just what was meant to be. And I do find, as I said earlier, I think that most of the things that I think are good for me are not necessarily. And when I'm going, I want to go this way, and something happens and I go that way. That way was a better way to go in the first place.
Yeah. You mentioned God a few times. Do you have a relationship with God? Like, are you religious at all? Or for you, what
Not
is your,
remotely religious, in the sense that I don't go to church every Sunday. And there's a wonderful church here that my husband, he's Catholic, and he goes every Sunday religiously. And I love the priest and I love his sermons. And I finally said, look, I love your sermons. I wish I could come to church and just hear your sermons and then get out, and not all this getting up and getting down and kneeling and bad singing and all that stuff. And he said, well, just come and hear the sermon, sit in the back. And I said, okay, it's a deal. But he's really a good guy. This is Val.
Hello, we met.
Okay. I don't know if you actually saw before.
Yeah.
And this is my husband.
oh,
He's
there
going to
he
tell
is.
you the real truth. This is John.
Hi, John.
Hello yourself.
Hello. My husband's name is John too, so that's easy to
Really?
remember. Yeah.
Woman.
You're you're not in the frame.
Oh, well,
Stupid little.
I'm not kneeling down either.
No, don't do that. It's not a bad thing. Well,
What are you guys talking about?
me, I'm having a wonderful time.
Really?
Yes.
You want the truth?
Talk to him.
Well, John, I do have a question. How would you describe Michael in one word? You can only pick one.
Beautiful.
Oh, thank
Look
you.
at that.
Is that
That's
sweet?
so sweet. Yeah, it
Yes, it
is.
was like that, right?
33 years we've been together.
How many?
33.
Wow.
Which is probably longer than you've been alive, right?
It is.
But just be nice to her.
If you keep trying, you eventually get it right. That should be my.
What's well, what about what for you guys has been the hardest thing to go through together? Because 33 years, you've probably gone through something hard together, right?
Um, I'm going to leave that one to you, John, because I came into the marriage with a lot of baggage, and John didn't. So I give him credit, really, for his patience and for the fact. I mean, if I ever did finish my memoir, I would describe how whenever we've had a real argument about something, and we've had some heated ones, he would come into the bedroom, sit down in the chair, and say, "Okay, let's hash it out." And we would, we'd hash it out. He said to me when we got married, he said two things: no cats and no gray. And we have a cat.
We had a cat within a year.
Why don't
That's,
you like
that's
cats,
promise.
John?
Oh, a guy I was rooming with brought home this great big cat. And one night I guess he rolled over or something. I don't know what he did. But he went after his own cat because it just kind of crushed out cut him up on his face and almost hit an eye. And I saw that and I said, there it is, no cats. And I didn't want one around. But then she brought home this thing. It was about that big. And she said, it's not a cat, it's a kitten.
Well, I got it in New York. You hadn't seen it, remember?
Yeah.
I
Well,
had
she
to
didn't
tell
even,
him on the phone.
you
He hung
have,
up on me.
She had it for a month before she told me she had it. So they had fully bonded before this was revealed.
Oh,
Amy Ryan, do you know who she is? She's a wonderful actress, and we were in a show together, a play together. And she brought this kitten, and she said, I took it home, but my cats don't get along with it. And she found it in an alleyway, one of the, backstage.
yeah.
And I said, well, I'll take it. And then I had to call him and tell him I waited a few weeks. And I said, I have this cat. And he said, I have this kitten. And he said, you got a cat? And he hung up. And
Oh no.
I called him back and I did the whole manipulative. It's not a cat, it's a kitten. And then of
None
course,
of which was believed.
well, it was a kitten. And then the kitten, John was taking a nap one day in New York. He would come every 2 weeks and spend the weekend. And the kitten climbed up on you can tell the rest if you want.
Crawled up on the bed. I was pretending to be asleep, hoping it would just go away. And it crawled up on my chest, on my heart, curled into a ball, and purred itself to sleep. And I was a goner.
Yeah, you can't. That's too much.
That was too much.
I caught him singing Turalura Lura to this cat. Literally singing a lullaby to the cat. Mr. Hard-hearted animal cat-hating person there.
How long did you have the cat?
Till a car got it out in the
Yeah.
street 3 or 4
Oh.
years later.
Miss Kitty. Yeah.
That
She's up,
must have been hard.
she's up there. I have her picture as a kitten, and then I have her ashes up there. And hopefully I'm going to be cremated with all my pets.
Have you had many pets?
Whenever I can. I'm trying to talk him into letting me get another dog, but I think he's afraid I might die and he'd be stuck with it or something. But he said I can have one in September. So we'll see. We have a cat. A wonderful cat.
Sometime in September. Be the 1st or the 31st.
Yeah, maybe the last day. As you don't like dogs, Ivor?
I just don't like putting them down.
No,
I've had
Oh,
2 or 3 of the dogs
it's
down.
really hard.
And
that's
I just,
hard. Yeah.
enough dead animals.
But then you have to think of it the other way, that you're giving them a life because they'd have been put down long before we got them, some of them. We always get them from a rescue.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's true.
So that's a big fantasy. They could have a gorgeous life with someone else. How will we ever know?
Well, we'll talk about that privately. You don't have to have a argument on the phone. On the Zoom, I mean.
Well, Michael, I want to ask you one last question because I want to be respectful of your time, but I was gonna say, what if you had to pick a song to match your personality? What kind of song do you think? It can be with lyrics, it can be without. What song do you think describes you as a person?
Laura, you mean?
No,
Irish lullaby?
no, what song?
Danny Boy? We
That's-
just go on and on with Irish songs.
That fit her
I don't
personality,
relate
though.
to Danny Boy, and I don't relate to Turalura. It's a good question. There's so many
What's that?
me's.
What's that song that
What
Celine
song?
Dion sang in the Olympic opening ceremony? Did you hear that one?
The French song, yeah.
Yeah, was originally sung by Edith Piaf. Ooh, that's some touching music.
What do you
I
think, Michael?
blanked.
Does
I
that
can't
fit?
think of a good answer to that. I'm sorry, I really can't.
No, there's a lot of songs, so I can understand it's hard to pin one down.
Well, it's just that human being, we're so complex as people, we have a good side, a bad side, a side side. We're so complicated. All of us. It's there are no so-called normal people. I don't think it's like unless you're this, and who wants to be that? Nobody. Somebody once pointed that out to me when I was weeping on a bed. She was a therapist. I said, I just want to be normal. She said, what do you think normal is? I said, this. And she said, you don't want that. She said, an electric light bulb does this, and that's how it gives light. And I thought, oh, well, that's another way of looking at it. You don't have to, you don't have to be that. You can be that.
I don't
And
even think, honestly, you can be that unless you're just drugged up the whole time. I don't
yeah,
know how
wouldn't it
you
be
can.
awful? Yeah. I don't know. I was just in so much dramatic trauma. I was just
Yeah.
an angry woman who didn't, I think to angry women everywhere, if you don't know you're angry, you're going to hurt more people than when you figure out that you are, and then you can control it and put it in more constructive places. And I never knew how angry I was. I thought I'm just this side of Mother Teresa, and I would leave corpses in my wake as I walked through a room with my sarcasm and my jokes or whatever. I would give you the shoes off my feet, but by the same token, I had no idea I was angry. And so when I found it out, it was very liberating in a way and scary because I thought, I don't want to be an angry person, but
Yeah.
I own it. And then now I can. It's like if you think of the Jewish people and what they went through in Second World War, and they took that terrible trauma and tragedy and they turned it into helping each other and to doing good things in the world. And
Yeah.
that's why I have such great admiration for the Jewish people, my Jewish friends. And that's to me to sum it up, I guess that's to me what life is really all about. It's lessons learned and trying to do better. And I said to somebody, probably John, I said on my tombstone, I want you to put, she tried and died. Or she died, but she tried. I don't know which one is better.
I
You know,
haven't given it, by the way.
Well, I don't want a tombstone anyway. I want to be ashes on a garden somewhere.
it sounds definitely
My
more
pets. Huh?
the ashes. I can understand why people like that better. The tombstone does seem pretty cold and hard.
Well, ashes help things grow. They're actually good. It's actually good for the ground.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to do this, but I did. My sister, when my mother was cremated, we all got little bags of her ashes,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a little ceremony where we let her ashes go in Northern California, a place that I really love, um, Inverness, and we did that little ceremony. But I kept some, and when John and I went to Ireland, she loved Ireland, and I put her ashes around a tree that had wild begonias growing under it. And as John remembers this more than I do even, but I sprinkled them around the tree, and then this light drizzle started to come down, and I watched her ashes just disappear into the earth. It was really beautiful.
An Irish mist.
She would have liked that. Yeah, she would have liked that, I think. Either that or she would have said, "Oh, you idiot." I don't know what an idiot thing to do.
Well, Michael, you might come up with your own title of your book. What you said earlier, lessons learned. What was it? Lessons learned and
Well, I think that's been taken. I think Mary Beth McDonough, who played Erin on the show, she
oh,
wrote Lessons Learned from Walton's Mountain. No, I don't want it to be a book about. I want it to be if I write the book, and if I have written a lot, but I mean, if I start up again, I want it to be really personal. I don't want it to be about what I've done or who I've slept with or who I haven't slept with, although I have no problem. I haven't slept with that many people, but I mean, I have no problem writing about my life in those terms. And that's what makes people buy books, I guess.
yeah, it's kind of sad.
Yeah, I'm not a good enough writer to write. Have you heard of a writer named Laurie Lee? He's an
Hmm.
English writer, and I love his work. Cider with Rosie, you know him, yes. And anyway, if I could write like that, boy, but I can't.
Well,
I'm
you
not.
can get oh my
But I
gosh, you just said his name.
I
John
know,
Boy.
I know it.
She
John Boy.
writes very well, and the only thing she won't write about is the Waltons.
I know.
And who are the people that are going to buy the book? Walton fans. gotten
Well, it
her on.
seems like she wants to do a more holistic look at her
You
life.
can do
Goes to
both.
the Waltons.
The Waltons part is the easy part
Well, that would be part,
to
because it
write
was a
about.
big chunk of my life, young
Sure.
life. But it's not what I'm about or how I've known some really interesting people. I've written about Christopher Plummer and Jason Robarts and people I've worked with,
Hmm.
um, who are wonderful people, and observing them before I was a quote celebrity myself was
Wow.
really interesting for me. I don't know if it'll be interesting for other people, but I want it just to be about, and then I drank, and then I got sober, and then this, and then that. I don't want it to be that, but that would be part of it, of course. I have to
Well,
sit down and do it. Are you a writer? Do you sit down and write? I mean, it's the sitting down and doing it. That's
it's really it's daunting. No, I agree with you.
yeah.
It's daunting. But I've heard as soon as you do it and you keep doing it, it gets easier.
Yeah, I did have a period where I was doing it every day, and I think I'm working up to it. I find myself waking up and thinking about something I want to write about, and then I forget it. But it's just a matter of sitting down and starting. And
Yeah.
somebody said, sit down and you do 15 minutes. Just
Well, I'll
15
tell
minutes.
you what, if you write it, I will read it. I will be
Will
the
you read
first
it?
person to buy your book.
What,
Yeah.
what should I call it?
Well, you
Well,
just said some good titles. Maybe
what
even
was the
something about
original?
ashes. You know, I was gonna say, I know the Bible says beauty from ashes, and it seems like your life has
Does
been
it say
ashes.
that? Beauty from ashes?
It does, yeah. I'm
Oh,
thinking your life is beautiful, has become beautiful more
is
than it
it?
was, and it was ash before. That's how you felt. That would be a good title.
Okay, that is good. And the only other one I've thought of is show up,
That's a
because
good
that's
title
what I've
too.
done all my life is I somehow showed up even when I was terrified. I drove down to LA to audition for the Waltons, and I was terrified in my little VW Bug. And I stayed at a $12 a night motel, became friends with the manager, a woman, and but I did things that scared me. I showed up, and you just have to show up for life, even if you don't think you can do it, or even if you're crying or whatever you're doing. Keep showing up. Keep putting one
I
foot in front of the other.
That's a good title too. See, you just have to think about it a little longer. That's all.
Yeah, I have to write it first
Yeah.
and then got the title.
Well, Michael, it's
But
been
you're
such a
encouraging me, so I'll
gift.
get back to it.
It's been so cool to talk to you and you too, John. It's been great to
Thank
meet
you.
you.
You make it a conversation, which is lovely. I really, it's like friendship.
I'm
Nice.
so
You have a
glad.
good smile.
Yes, you do. You have a beautiful smile.
Thank you. All right. Well, you have a good night and
Thank
write
you.
that book, Michael.
Okay.
Please write it.
Okay. Yes.